Hey, hey, hey. I hope that my headset is actually recording this, but we will see. Welcome to my channel. How are you today? If I sound funny, it's because every single tree in existence where I live has buds on it, and my whole sinuses are like, whoa. I hope that you're having a good day. I've had a weird start to the morning, but I just got off a call and it was the fastest webinar I have ever been on. And by and large, one of the best, most straightforward. I felt like we zoomed through it, but it was actually packed with content. And I have to give Airtable some serious props because I have been on some awful webinars lately where they just take forever to get to the point. And so I'm really grateful and I'm really happy that I signed up for that. The content of the webinar was to learn how to use Airtable for project management. And between a talk that I listened to yesterday about an app for very large-ish corporations who have board members, and it was the name of who was speaking really caught my eye. I'll leave a link to the talk below if you want to hear it. But it was Edward Norton, and I'm like, what? But it turns out he's been in the tech industry for years and got tired of 6-hour board meetings that, droned on and never got to the point and wanted to create kind of an interactive experience between the managers of a corporation and the board. And I just found it really, really interesting to hear him talk about that whole concept and how the app was designed and why they designed it, more the why than anything else. And after listening to that, I recorded a video, and I'm not really pleased with how that went. So I decided to, after watching this other one that was just like bang, bang, boom, okay, have a nice day. Like it literally was less than a half an hour. Like that doesn't happen. And it was so cool because there was no fluff. She just said, hey, my name is blah, 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 and I do this, and let's launch in. And she got right at it, and I was never bored once. And I never really zoned out even. And that's really hard for me because I have ADHD. So anyway, I think that one of the things that I'm recognizing as I'm looking at some of these bigger picture things and I'm doing some work on getting certified as a project manager and thinking about my own experience as a project coordinator or transaction coordinator. That is basically a really specific name for a project coordinator. One of the things that I really, really like honed in on over the last couple days, because I've really been engrossed in this and like, how can I market this to smaller businesses, is this idea that we can take kind of these corporate structures that we all may or may not be familiar with, and then really bring them down and bring them over, rather not really down, but over into a smaller space. Like, how do we implement these same things on a smaller scale in a way that makes sense for a small business to utilize so that we have the same impact and yet we maybe don't have, you know, 8 different people that we need to report to, it's just 1 or 2, right? And maybe we don't have a board of directors that also needs to be cued in on what the plans are for the year ahead. but maybe we have this interactive. So one of the things that Edward Norton said is that um, instead of having just this static report, because one of the ones that he mentioned was this 98-page PDF document that he got in advance of the meeting, and then he went to the meeting and they literally read the document to him, and he's like, why did you send this to me if you were just going to read it to me, right? And it was so enlightening, and he's like, we really need to make these things, it should be a living document, right? And so I'm like, wait, because oftentimes the project manager is the only person who has, in a larger corporation, project manager is the only person who really has full-on access to the project, and everybody has their bits, but then there's nowhere to go to see kind of a dashboard, a living dashboard, so that once a week, if somebody wants to check in or can check in, they can do it on their phone. Like, it's really, really hard to do that in something like Microsoft Projects or even Google Docs, because I think that stuff would just be all over the place. But if you have something in, let's say, especially for a small business, like that was a thing that I have noticed, having worked as a VA for so long, is that we tended to have things all over the damn place. Like some of it was in Airtable, some of it was in Google Docs and Google Sheets, some of it was over here, and some of it was over here. And you just had to have all of these things open. And in addition to that, we still didn't have like a real proper to-do list. And, some of that, so I'd have to create my own, and really like not having someone ahead of time going, here's the goal, here's what we're doing, here's how we're going to do it, and then here are all of the steps that have to happen, and here are the dependencies and the kind of waterfall situation that we find ourselves in. We're an agile situation that we find ourselves in, and this is the system we're using. So I think taking those broad, larger corporation style concepts and really applying them to your business can not only make the process much better for you and your VA or you and your team, it can save you a lot of time and money, because when people are having to look all over the damn place to find this one thing, right? Whereas if you have within, let's say it is Airtable, just Airtable's on my mind right now, but it could be ClickUp, it could be Asana, it could be any number of places. But let's say you have those systems and you go, our goal is to do this summit in August, right? And one of the things that has to happen before the summit can be done is we have to write out, all of the social media posts for the summit and for the affiliate. And then we also need, next to that, we have our own social media posts, and then we need the swipe file copy for affiliates, right? And so now these two things are side by side. They both need to be done, and they're housed in, this one is definitely housed in Google Docs, and this one can also be housed in Google Docs. Let's make sure that somewhere within that to-do item, we have pages already linked, so that if you are the person utilize, okay, and then we have to schedule we have to schedule an email to go out for all the affiliates so that they have their swipe copy in advance, at least a month in advance. And then we have all of our own stuff scheduled at least a month in advance, so that if anything changes last minute, we're not running around like chickens with our heads cut off. We've got everything in line, and it's just a matter of going now into the scheduler, which is also linked in the same place. Do you see how all of this being in one place, and even if the the stuff itself is in multiple places. The idea that the project is outlined in one place, and then in addition, we've set out from the get-go and said, these are all the problems that I can see coming up, right? I could see sorry, there's like cars. I live in a neighborhood with one in and one out, and we kind of have like a turnaround here. And there were like 5 people, and it was crazy. What are the things that could go wrong, right? So doing your due diligence at the outset, like you would for, let's say, a software release, let's say Baldur's Gate 3, right? So Baldur's Gate 3 is a video game. It's amazing, by the way. It's beautiful and amazing. I've not played it myself, but my husband has played it like 3 times now. And it just came out like 7 or 8 months ago. It took 6 years for them to build this. So I'm sure within that project, there was a whole laundry list of issues that could come up, right? And so you have an issue, a whole log, again, can be done in Airtable and then linked somewhere else. And you could do these same things in Notion, right? So you have like a whole wiki that is for your problem management and potential problems, potential issues that come up. And then we have an actual issues log. So this is the thing that I'm learning in my class, is that in major corporations, they sit down and think about all of this stuff and create the contingency plans in advance, so that should there be, let's say, a software glitch, and let's say our social media scheduler buffer has a moment of buffering. What I did there. What are you gonna do, right? Let's say Facebook has another glitch for a couple of hours and your stuff was scheduled to go out at 7. Do we know if buffer is designed to put the post out as soon? Does it know that it hasn't gone out, and does it go back and fix it? Or do we need to go back in and reschedule it for a later time in the afternoon, when we hope that Facebook will be open, right? So looking into these, asking these questions, developing a backup plan, or do we just need to manually go in and do it, right? Asking these questions in advance will really, really help create a space for, let's say, the social media manager to go in and go, okay, I'm having XYZ problem. Buffer at Facebook had a glitch and the post didn't go out at 7 a.m. like we had planned. What am I going to do? And so they go to the potential issues log, figure out what the backup plan is, and then they go to the actual issues log and say, we have a problem. Red alert, we have a problem. Or buffer itself has just gone down. We have a problem. Houston, we have a problem, and how are we going to fix it, right? And so this idea that we could take some time, not a great deal of time, but let's say 2 or 3, 1 to 3 hours before the project even kicks off, before the project even starts, as we're having the conversation, if this is going to take this long and this is going to take this long, and how much resources do we need for this? Do we have the budget for this? And that is like a whole nother thing. I see people regularly doing one thing, which in and of itself would be fantastic, but later on it comes to bite them in the ass because they really didn't have the funds to pay for that thing, right? So I think that trying to think of an example. I have one in my head, but for privacy reasons, I don't know that I can utilize it. Let's try something else. Okay. So you are going to have an event where there is a live portion and then a non-live portion. And you decide, I'm going to hire someone for the event days, right? So for sure the day that is live, and that's what 6 to 8 hours, right? Maybe it's less than that, maybe it's only 3 or 4, something like that, just so that you don't have to be there the entire day. Okay. So now we have 3 to 4 hours worth of paid time, and then that person is also going to help the other days for the non-live portion. So again, you don't have to be on call the entire 8 to 10 hours that people may be experiencing problems, having questions, whatever, what have you. And there are quite a number of people who could do this job. And really, if the resources are all laid out and all of the answers are there for them, and the potential questions have come up, there may be 1 or 2 that they can't answer, but for the most part, you can create a wiki for the rest of them in something, again, like Notion. And so realistically, you shouldn't have to pay a whole hell of a lot for that. But instead of getting multiple quotes for this thing, you hire the most expensive person, and it turns out to be, let's say, $3,000 or $4,000 for that person's help over the 4 days, and you only make total from that event, let's say $10,000, right? Because you're selling something, it's an event, you're selling something, you make $10,000 total. However, you've also spent money on a copywriter, you've spent money on other people's help to help you with the prep beforehand. You've spent money on software and systems like Zoom and a video hosting, let's say it's Uscreen or something like that, where you're housing the actual videos. You've got all of, and now you have an email list, which has grown exponentially, so that to set you up into a much higher tier. And by the end of it, after everything is said and done, you are actually running at a loss. You didn't know how much money you were going to make, but according to industry standards, you made about the average of what everybody would make on something like this in the first or second iteration, right? And it might turn into a $100,000 event, or it might turn into a $50,000 event, but the first 2 iterations are, generally speaking, lower. And so what we could have done, and had we sat down and looked at what the industry standard for this type of event is, and looked at all of these variables, we could have come together and said, okay, so let's just take the industry average. Let's say you make $10,000. How much do you personally want to make from this event? Do you want to net $1,000, which means that we have a $9,000 budget? Or do you want to make $2,500, in which case we have a $7,500 budget? And then we figure out ways to allocate those resources. Maybe you don't hire a copywriter the first time. Maybe you don't go for the most expensive VA on the market for this type of event. And maybe you find some videos middle of the road, Okay. Maybe you don't run $5,000 in ads to get here to that $10,000 mark. You know what I mean? Like, and if we're not sitting down and we're not mapping all of these things out, you can very, very quickly get yourself in a situation. And I don't want that for you. I want you to be profitable. I want you to be successful. I want you to go into events like this or launches like this and go, I'm going to make some damn money. Because that's what we're here for, right? That's what the stress of all those launches are, is to make money. To help people for sure, right? And ClickUp is designed to help people. It is a valuable service. Airtable is designed to help people. But you know what? At the end of the day, they're not a charity. They want to make money, and that's okay. So I'm going to give you permission to make money, but I want you to do it smartly and with all of your ducks in a row. Okay. So I think that when we design these projects and when we're going to check in on them, it's really handy to have everything in one space, or at least navigatable, whatever that word is. I want you to be able to navigate from this space into all of the other places that you have to have things at. And quite frankly, I love the idea of putting all of the content in something like Airtable, but please don't do that. Because it will be a nightmare to get it out of there. And something like Google Docs and something that is older and more stable and more secure is your better bet. And having things in more than one place is also advisable. So, and the cool thing is you could download everything in your Google Drive into one file and just stick it onto a hard drive. Make your life easy, okay? Make your life easy. All right, guys. That's what I got for you. I hope this didn't come off preachy. I hope that this was actually helpful. That's what I was trying to do yesterday, and it just didn't come out the way that I had hoped. And I'll talk to y'all later. See ya. Bye.